Oh,
Okay, so I'm very excited. This is the first of a three-part series that Colette has been kind enough to uh, lead for research and lead for us about Jews in America at different time periods. And tonight is going to be Jews in America in colonial times. Um, the next one will be Wednesday, February 18th, Jews in America in the Civil Rights Movement. And I'll send out reminders for that again. Uh, so, Colette, if you're ready.
I am. Okay.
Okay, so I know you and Mark are working together with some
Yep, we got
slides
some
and things to show,
visuals. Yeah.
visual. Okay.
So you'll just let me know, Colette,
Okay.
when
I
to
will.
change, when to take it down, whatever you
Okay.
like.
And what do you want
Okay.
to do if people have questions? You want to, can people just
What I was
jump
gonna,
in
I was gonna.
or?
Anytime you want to ask a question, I'll try to answer it, or you just want to make a comment, just please jump on in. Okay. Just be comfortable doing that.
Okay.
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 And let me just make one request from everybody. If you could stay on mute when you're not speaking, it tends because sometimes we end up getting echoes from people who aren't. So you can mute yourself and unmute as you want, or I can mute you if I see you're not on. Okay, great. So we're
Okay.
gonna mute ourselves. And
All right. So, welcome everybody. I'm so glad you could all come tonight, and I thank Rhonda and Adult Education for giving me this great opportunity. And thank you, Mark, for all your technical help and the wonderful enhancements you've done to some of the photos that I have ready for this presentation. It's just marvelous. This has been a real exciting learning experience for me. For those of you who know me a little bit, you know that I'm a history buff and I really enjoy doing research and reading about the American Revolutionary times. But I had never done any research about what was going on with the Jewish communities during that time and earlier. So this was all new to me and it was really exciting. And I was kind of sad when I got done with all the research because it was so much fun doing it. Anyway, I was amazed at the number of websites that are out there that have this information about what were Jews doing in different cities in the 1700s and the 1600s. It's amazing. And those websites were very, very helpful to me. I used several dozen of them. And the photos that you'll see tonight come from those websites, with the exception of two that I took myself in Newport. So it's just really pretty exciting. And I hope you'll enjoy this talk as much as I enjoyed putting it together. The outline for tonight, I'll be discussing Jewish colonial life in 6 different US cities: Newport, New York, Savannah, Philadelphia, Charleston, and Richmond. And I'll start with the oldest congregation, which is in New York City, and then we'll end with the last one that was formed during that era, which is Richmond, Virginia. And along the way, I think you're going to meet some pretty fascinating individuals. Okay, there are four background topics that I'd like to just take a couple minutes and discuss. It will help you understand a little bit more about what's going on a little bit later in the talk. And the first one is the Spanish Inquisition. So, the Spanish Inquisition, in my opinion, in the end, probably was the major reason Jews in the colonial period moved to America. It began in 1478 in Spain and didn't officially end until 1834. It's been estimated that Spain expelled about 100,000 Jews from the country in 1492. Many of them fled to Portugal, but their arrival in that country was met with ambivalence. Portugal certainly needed people with their types of skills, but anti Semitism was alive and very well there too. Eventually, they were given the choice to convert to Catholicism or leave. Some converted, and some converted but lived as crypto Jews, meaning they practiced Judaism secretly in their homes. But they lived in constant fear of being outed and then being persecuted by the Inquisition. Additionally, between 1580 and 1640, Spain and Portugal shared the same monarch in what was called the Iberian Union, and the Inquisition was alive and active in both of those countries. So Jews in Iberia fled to safer countries such as the Netherlands and England. Jews had been expelled from England in 1290, but were allowed back into the country 400 plus years later during Oliver Cromwell's government in the 1650s. Many of the Spanish Portuguese refugees had experience in maritime trading, so they easily found new opportunities in port cities. The second item I want to discuss just briefly is Dutch Brazil. The Low Countries of the Netherlands and Belgium were at war against rule by the Habsburg monarchy of a combined Spain and Portugal. The war was called the Dutch Revolt or the 80 Years' War, and it ran from 1568 to 1648. Reasons for their discontent with the Habsburg rule included Spanish Catholicism versus their Protestantism, and high taxes and the monarchy's attempt at absolute control. During the war, the Dutch West India Company, the largest trade company in the Caribbean and an arm of the Dutch government, was given permission by the Netherlands to conquer and control any Habsburg lands they could. The company led military campaigns and raided Spanish ships. Eventually, they seized and controlled for a time a huge area of land in northeast Brazil that was rich in sugarcane. And in 1624, it became their colony called Dutch Brazil. So, Mark, if we could have photo 1 of Dutch Brazil, that would be great. Okay, according to Howard W. French in his book, Born in Blackness, Holland had taken over Brazil in order to deprive Portugal and Bourbon Spain, which Portugal remained conjoined, of the income produced by slaves working in sugar. The most important city in Dutch Brazil was Recife, and it's on the right-hand side of this little pinkish beigeish area. That's Dutch Brazil. Recife is on the coast, just below the little city called Olinda. I don't know if you can all see that okay. It had one of the largest Jewish populations in the New World. A number of Jews from the Low Countries moved here and continued their maritime trading businesses. Principally because of the sugarcane that was brought to Brazil by the Portuguese, Recife became the second richest New World city, competing only with Havana. The Dutch held this land for 24 years until the Portuguese won it back. Then the Jews were given 90 days to leave the country or be handed over to the Inquisition. Many moved to various Caribbean plantation islands, and others traveled to North America, as we'll see very shortly. Okay, thank you, Mark, for that photo.
Do you want me to take the photos
Yes,
now?
please.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
The third item is colonial Jewish population. According to data from the Library of Congress, an estimated 1,000 to 2,500 Jewish people lived in the American colonies at the start of the Revolutionary War in 1775. About 60% of them lived in the 6 cities I'll be discussing. And the fourth item is slave trade. According to Jewish historian Rabbi Jacob Rader Marcus, over 75% of Jewish families in Charleston, Richmond, and Savannah owned slaves, and nearly 49% of Jewish households across the country did also. And according to historian Eli Faber, in 1790, Charleston's Jews, estimated to be between 200 and 500 people, owned a total of 93 slaves. Additionally, Jewish ship owners imported Africans and sold them. They also invested in and owned ships that were used in the slave trade. They were heavily involved in financing the sugar trade out of Dutch Brazil and owned sugar plantations there and in several Caribbean islands. However, they never dominated the slave trade. We'll meet a few of the men involved in the trade a little bit later in this discussion. Okay, so the first city we'll talk about is New York. So let's go to New Amsterdam/New York, Congregation Shearith, Israel. In 1654, 3 Jews named Asser Levi, Jacob Bar Simon, and Solomon Peterson arrived in New Amsterdam from the Netherlands. It's believed that while living in Amsterdam, they heard about the economic opportunities in the Dutch colony of New Netherland across the Atlantic. At this time, New Amsterdam was the capital of New Netherland, which encompassed parts of Connecticut, New York, Delaware, and Maryland. Within 2 weeks of their arrival, 23 other Sephardi Jews arrived from Dutch Brazil after the Portuguese recaptured it in 1654 and resumed the Inquisition. In that same year, Congregation Shearith Israel was founded. It is considered the oldest continuous congregation in the United States. But if these immigrants, especially the 23 from Dutch Brazil, hoped that life might be easier for them in New Amsterdam, they were bound to be disappointed. Director General Peter Stuyvesant, a member and strong supporter of the Dutch Reformed Church, was deeply anti-Semitic and did not want Jews settling in New Amsterdam. He wondered how these immigrants who had lost everything when they were forced to flee Dutch Brazil would be able to take care of themselves and survive in New Amsterdam. Would they become a financial burden for the colony? Also, if he allowed Jews to reside in the city, what other peoples, like Catholics and Quakers and Lutherans, would continue to move there, soon outnumbering the Dutch Reformed? Additionally, the resident merchants in the city regarded the Jewish immigrants as potential threats to their own prosperity. Most likely, they realized that these Jews had maritime trading experience and they didn't really welcome the competition. So in 1654, Stuyvesant wrote to his superiors in the Dutch West India Company, complaining about the Jews, calling them, quote, hateful enemies and blasphemers of the name of Christ, end quote. But the Jews fought back. Some of them had worked successfully with the Dutch West India Company in Dutch Brazil, so they were no strangers to the company personnel. They petitioned the Dutch West India Company for permission to remain in New Amsterdam, and in 1655 were granted permission to stay. Asser Levi began the fight for the Jews to have burger rights in New Amsterdam. Burger rights, or citizens' rights, allowed residents to, among other things, trade freely and practice their crafts. The magistrates of New Amsterdam who issued these rights had initially denied those rights to the Jews. Levi petitioned the courts, claiming he had been a burgher when he had lived in Amsterdam. Still, his request was denied. But soon after that, Jews joined in petitioning the court along with some non-Jewish resident supporters. Stuyvesant finally relented and allowed the Jews burger rights. Despite these gains, over the years, many Jews left New Amsterdam for other ports and better prospects. Anti-Semitism continued, and other rights, such as the right to worship in public, were denied them. By 1663, most Jews had left the city. But Asser Levi and some others remained. In 1664, New Amsterdam became the British colony of New York, which made Levy a British subject. He continued with his trading business and also became the butcher for the city, albeit exempt from slaughtering hogs. Russell Shorto writes in his book, Taking Manhattan, that Levy, quote, opened a butcher shop at the corner of Wall and Pearl Streets. Russell Shorto also says, quote, it may not be too much of a stretch to call it New York's first Jewish deli. Asser Levy Park on Coney Island and Asser Levy Recreation Center in Manhattan are named after him. In 1730, the first synagogue, known as the Mill Street Synagogue, was built near Wall Street. Questions or comments about New York?
I'll give you a comment because Rhonda and I both grew up in Brooklyn, and I know going to school, we just learned about all of these early settlers being in favor of religious freedom, and the truth is very far away from that. So we learned about Peter Stuyvesant. They never told us that he wanted all the Jews evicted.
What I've always enjoyed doing studying history is look for the stuff that's been shoved underneath the carpet. It's for me the most interesting stuff. Okay, we'll move on up to Newport, Rhode Island. And this is called Congregation Jesserut Israel or Touro Synagogue. In 1636, Puritan minister Roger Williams was exiled from the Massachusetts Bay Colony for questioning the church's enforcement of religious conformity. He settled on land granted to him by the Native American tribe, the Narragansetts, and named the area Providence Plantations. His belief in religious freedom informed the eventual creation of the colony of Rhode Island. In 1658, Jewish settlers led by Mordecai Campanel, Moses Pacheco, Simon Mendez, Abraham Bugos, and David Nassi arrived in Newport from Dutch Brazil via the British Caribbean island of Barbados. This was 5 years before the colony of Rhode Island even received a royal charter from England. In 1677, these men secured a deed for land in Newport area for a cemetery. By 1759, the second oldest Jewish congregation began building their synagogue and completed it in 1763. At the beginning of the Revolutionary War, the British captured Newport and many of the resident Jews fled to other colonies, since most of them were supporters of the Patriot cause. After the British decamped New York in 1779, many returned. Mark, if we could have photo 2 of Isaac Touro. Isaac Touro was born in the Netherlands and moved to Newport in 1760. As a loyalist during the war, he remained in the city with his family during the British occupation. He was the Chazan of Congregation Jesserut Israel and kept watch over the synagogue after the British turned it into a hospital for British soldiers. It's believed that this repurposing of the synagogue saved it from being torn apart by the British for firewood. When the British left Newport in 1779 for New York, he moved there as well. A man named Moses Seixas was born in New York to Ashkenazi Sephardic parents who moved to Newport in 1765. In Newport, he became a merchant and a trader, and he was known patriot during the Revolutionary War. He is the best remembered for the congratulatory letter he sent to George Washington in 1790 after Washington was elected president. Okay, Mark, we can take that photo down, please. In the letter, written on behalf of Jeshurun Israel congregation, he sought assurance from Washington that religious freedom would be respected in the new republic. Washington, who had visited the synagogue earlier that year, replied in part that bigotry had no sanction and persecution no assistance in the new government. He also wrote the following to the congregation, and I quote, "May the children of the stock of Abraham who dwell in this land continue to merit and enjoy the goodwill of the other inhabitants, while everyone shall sit safely under his own vine and fig tree, and there shall be none to make him afraid." Could we have photo number 3 of Aaron Lopez, please? Originally from Portugal, Aaron Lopez was an international trader and shopkeeper in Newport. His family of conversos first lived in New York. Once away from the Spanish Inquisition, he changed the name he was given at birth, Duarte, to Aaron, and was circumcised and openly practiced Judaism. Even though he felt the patriot cause was a good one, as an international trader, he needed to remain on friendly terms with the British Navy. So he didn't commit himself politically to either side. He built a candle-making factory and was involved in trading whale oil, sugar, and enslaved people. By 1772, he was one of the wealthiest persons in Newport. He helped fund Touro Synagogue and gave shelter to Jewish refugees during the Revolutionary War. Okay, Mark, if we could have photo number 4 of the synagogue.
I have a question. You
Yes,
said that both Isaac Toro and Aaron Lopez came from Portugal? Or
Lopez was originally from Portugal, and Toro was born in the Netherlands.
Netherlands? Okay, Netherlands
Yeah,
takes away that part of the question.
yeah.
He looks, his coloring looks so fair for someone from Portugal. I always think of well, I have Portuguese acquaintances, and they tend to be Mediterranean dark, olive skin and dark hair, dark eyes. So I was just taken a little back to see his light eyes and fair skin.
Of Aaron Lopez.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if Tura was from the Netherlands, that explains the coloring.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is actually a photo I took of Touro Synagogue in Newport, the exterior. It's just a beautiful building. Has anyone been there?
I have.
Okay, it's gorgeous. And number 5 photo, if we could have that, that's an interior photo I took. It's just part of the interior. It's just magnificent building. And if any of you get a chance to ever go to Newport, by all means, go to see this particular synagogue. It's wonderful. So today, the
And
17th.
they have, I'm trying to remember because it's been a few years,
Yeah.
more than a few since I was there, but they have prominently displayed George Washington's letter, right?
I don't remember that.
Do you remember?
I think they did.
I think
Yeah.
so.
It's been a while since I've been there.
Yeah.
And you can take a tour there too.
You can. We did a
Yeah.
tour. Yeah.
Yeah,
The letter was on loan for the Weitzman Museum of National Museum of American Jewish History when it first opened. And the title of the exhibition came from the statement about giving no quarter, was it? I don't remember exactly, but I believe they had to return it after the exhibit closed. I don't think it's part of the permanent collection.
Okay, thank you.
when I took the tour several years ago, there was a group from Brooklyn. And when we were told that the pillars, you see 2 of them on either side, were made from trees. You know, they were just the trees that were cut down, and there were 12 of them, one for each tribe. The gentleman from Brooklyn couldn't understand why they weren't sprouting leaves and branches, these pillars. And it really tested the patience of the guide. This poor man did not understand that the trees had once been alive. They no longer were.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my goodness. So today, the 1763 Toro Synagogue is the oldest synagogue in the United States and has a vibrant Orthodox congregation. It's considered one of the 10 most architecturally significant buildings in the United States. It's open for public tours and greets about 300,000 visitors each year. And in 1946, it was honored as a National Historic Site by the National Park Service. Okay, can take that photo down now if everybody's finished having a look. Are we all ready to go down to Savannah, get warm a little bit? So in Savannah, Congregation Mikveh Israel. In 1733, a group of Jews set sail for Savannah from London on a ship named William and Sarah. 34 of the 41 passengers were Sephardim, and the other 7 were Ashkenazim. This group would become the largest group of Jews to settle in North America during the colonial period. Many of the Sephardim, who had been living in Spain and Portugal as crypto-Jews, fled to London to escape the Inquisition. Because so many Jews were fleeing the Inquisition and were arriving in London, the city became concerned about how it was going to care for all of them and how the resident Christians would react to the influx. Many resident Jews were also concerned about the strain the impoverished immigrants were causing on their own charitable resources. There was only so much they could do. In response, a few prominent London Jews raised enough money to send a group of these Jews to the colony of Georgia, where it was hoped they would be able to start new lives and profitable businesses. The wealthy Salvador family was deeply involved in this project, and we'll hear a lot more about them a little bit later. The original charter of Georgia in 1732 permitted religious freedom for everyone except everyone except Catholics. The original charter of Georgia in 1732 permitted religious freedom for everyone except Catholics. Since Spain once had held Georgia, there was a fear of a Catholic fifth column gaining a foothold in the colony. Despite the charter, the Georgia trustees also decided to forbid the practice of Judaism. The English colonists there soon faced the realities of living in a humid, subtropical climate, and many fell ill, including their only doctor. About that time, the William and Sarah ship arrived in Savannah, carrying the London Jews. On board was a physician named Samuel Nunes. He got to work right away to help the stricken colonists. All of them recovered, and Nunes refused to be paid for his services. Ignoring the decree by the Georgia trustees, James Oglethorpe, the colony's leader, granted the Jews the right to remain in Georgia, practice Judaism, and purchase land. He also made Samuel Nunes the official physician for the colony. So the Jews purchased land and in 1733 established Congregation Mikveh Israel, making it the third oldest congregation in the colonies and the oldest one in the South. Between 1739 and 1748, the War of Jenkins' Ear occurred between Great Britain and Spain. This brought fear to the Jews in Georgia. They knew that if Spain won the war, the Inquisition would follow them to Georgia. In fact, Spain had invaded Georgia in 1742. Consequently, many Georgian Jews fled to safer cities such as Charleston and New York. Also on the William and Sarah ship in 1733 was a couple named Abraham and Abigail Minnis, Ashkenazim from Germany. James Oglethorpe granted them land that same year. Abraham was a merchant, and Abigail spent her days looking after their home and 8 children. 24 years later, in 1757, Abraham died, leaving Abigail alone to support the children and manage the properties. She successfully ran several businesses, including a tavern she managed with the help of her daughters until 1779. It was not just an ordinary tavern, but one that attracted the local elites. Abigail also owned a plantation and raised cattle and sheep with the help of enslaved people who lived on the property with her. With monies earned from the businesses, she helped the patriot causes by providing provisions to the Continental Army, the militias, and the French soldiers in Savannah. After Savannah fell to the British in 1778, the resident loyalists considered confiscating her properties, and the British called her a traitor for aiding the Patriots. She petitioned the governor of Georgia to be able to retain her properties, which he granted. With that assurance, she moved to friendlier Charleston until after the war. In 1783, she returned to Savannah and her businesses, and she died there at age 93. If we could have a photo number 6 of Mordecai Sheftall, please. Born in Savannah, Mordecai Sheftall was a merchant, shipper, and statesman. At a very young age, he bought, tanned, and sold deerskins and became wealthy doing so. Soon he was able to buy many acres of land near Savannah. During the Revolutionary War, he was made a colonel in the Continental Army and was its highest-ranking Jewish officer. He used his wealth to help support the cause, lending money to the colony of Georgia and the Continental Congress. He was never repaid. Congregation Mikvah Israel Synagogue was built in 1820. It has a vibrant community and offers tours of the synagogue. It has an excellent museum where you can see a 15th century Torah scroll, the oldest one in North America. Okay, thank you for that photo, Mark. Anybody have a comment or question?
I'll just mention that I don't travel much and I haven't been in any other place, but I was in Savannah about 20 years ago on with a group that used to be called Elder Hostel. Now it's called Rhodes Scholar. And I went there because the people who were in charge of the program, which lasted for a week, were close friends of mine. The wife had been my friend since we were 11. And they lived in Savannah and belonged to Mikvah Israel. And the husband taught religious school there. They were very active. And it was completely fascinating. The tour was centered at the congregation. And of course, we saw the museum, and there were lectures, and there were also tours of Savannah, a lovely city, I must say. So anyway, I'm glad that it's part of this course or lecture that you're giving us because it brings back happy memories. Thank you.
Oh, good. Okay, we'll move on to Philadelphia with Congregation Mikvah Israel. During the 1650s, some 30 years before William Penn founded the colony of Pennsylvania in 1682, Jews arrived in our area to engage in trading. At that time, what is now southeast Pennsylvania was controlled first by the Swedes, New Sweden, and then the Dutch, New Netherland. After 1682, under the Penn family's leadership, Pennsylvania, by law, enjoyed religious freedom, which no doubt attracted Jewish settlers. In 1740, a Jewish international mercantile trader living in Philadelphia named Nathan Levy needed a place to bury a son who had died. At that time, there was no such thing as public or state land in Pennsylvania, so he petitioned William Penn's son Thomas for a piece of land. Penn granted him some of his own land for the burial ground, and this became the first Jewish cemetery in Philadelphia, Mikveh Israel Cemetery, at Spruce Street between 8th and 9th Streets. The Sephardic congregation Mikveh Israel was founded in the 1740s. At first, the congregation held services in their homes and in rented spaces. Then in 1782, they built their synagogue. Today, it is the second oldest continually operating synagogue in the United States. In 1741, Nathan Levy and fellow Jew named David Franks formed a shipping company called Levy and Franks, the first Jewish business partnership in Philadelphia. Their ship called Myrtilla brought luxury goods to Philadelphia from London. Franks was also involved in the fur trade and in the importation and sale of enslaved Africans. We could have photo number 7, please, of the newspaper ad. Okay, I don't know how well you can all read this, but this is evidence of David Frank's slave ownership and involvement in the slave trade, and it comes from newspaper advertisements and tax assessments. In a February 9th, 1748 Pennsylvania Gazette ad on the top right, Franks promotes a recent shipment of goods on the schooner Hannah, including, quote, a cargo of likely Negroes, end quote. At right-hand side, a newspaper runaway ad associates 2 enslaved men, Greenwich and Peter, with David Franks. The little ad down here at the bottom left just is a runaway ad posted by Franks for Greenwich with a detailed description of his outfit. And this was common for ads at the time for runaway slaves. The item in the middle between that is in July 28th, 1773, runaway ad for Peter, who formerly lived with Mr. David Franks of Philadelphia until 1771. And the rightmost little ad there is a September 18th, 1776 runaway ad for Peter, who also had the courage to escape for a second time. Okay. During the Revolutionary War, David Franks remained a loyalist. By 1775, there were an estimated 300 Jews in Philadelphia. Many Jews from New York, Richmond, Charleston, and Savannah had fled to Philadelphia to escape British occupation of their cities. Congregation Mikveh Israel was a place of refuge for these patriot families. We could have photo number 8 of Chaim Solomon, please. Chaim Solomon, as far as I'm concerned, is an unsung hero of the Revolutionary War. Born in Poland, he left after political changes there made life very uncomfortable. He lived temporarily in London and then sailed to New York City with his wife and small child. In New York, he became a broker for international merchants. The fact that he was fluent in several different languages, including German and French, undoubtedly helped this. He was devoted to the patriot cause, joined the New York City Sons of Liberty, and became an interpreter for the Continental Army. In 1776, he was arrested by the British as an American spy, but was pardoned on the condition that he would spend 18 months aboard a British ship as a translator. The British needed someone who could speak German with the Hessian soldiers aboard and translate for them. He secretly used this time to convince a few Hessians to come over to the American side. In 1778, he was arrested and jailed again. This time he was not so lucky. He was sentenced to death for being a spy. But thanks to his fluency in German, he was able to bribe a Hessian guard and he escaped. At that point, he fled to Philadelphia. He had lost his fortune to the British in New York City, so after he arrived in Philadelphia, he had to borrow money to start up business again as a broker. He did extremely well and became very wealthy. Philadelphian Robert Morris was the superintendent of finances for the war. The colonial government was nearly broke and desperately needed money to pay the troops so they wouldn't mutiny or leave the army at the end of their terms. On several occasions, Washington instructed Morris to send for Haym Salomon for help. In one instance, Washington needed as much as $20,000 to keep the army financed. Salomon was able to come up with that cash within days. He personally advanced large sums of his own money for the war, and he successfully fundraised among his fellow business associates. Additionally, he facilitated loans to the Continental Congress from the Dutch and the French, and he lent at low interest rates money to Thomas Jefferson, James Wilson, James Madison, and other leaders. He never asked to be repaid, and he never was repaid. Sadly, he died penniless and in poor health when he was in his 40s. He is buried at the Mikveh Israel Cemetery in Philadelphia. Could have photo number 9 of Heald Square Monument, please. In 1941, the bronze Heald Square Monument in Chicago was dedicated to Robert Morris, George Washington, and Haym Salomon, who is on the right side of that statue, to honor them for their commitment to the revolutionary cause. And if we could have photo number 10, please. Salomon stamp. In 1975, a U.S. postal commemorative stamp was issued in Haym Salomon's honor. Thank you, Mark. I'll take that one down now. Questions or comments? All right. We'll move to Charleston at Kahal Kodesh Beth Elohim Congregation. In 1670, a group of English immigrants founded Charlestown, named after King Charles II. By the end of the Revolutionary War, it would become known as Charleston. Drawn by economic opportunities and religious freedom, the first Jew arrived in 1695, and others soon followed. Most of them were Sephardim from London and the Caribbean, who became traders, merchants, shopkeepers in the city. Carolina, as it was called before it was divided into North and South Carolina in 1712, was known as one of the most welcoming places for Jews in North America. They were allowed to obtain citizenship and could worship freely as permitted by the province's lord proprietors. However, they could not enjoy all the rights that Christians had. Jews were barred from holding political offices or voting because a statute adopted by the province in 1704 required any person who wanted to hold a political office in Carolina had to first swear an oath of faithfulness to the Church of England. Additionally, from 1716 to 1759, a man had to be a Christian in order to vote. Nonetheless, by 1749, there were enough Jewish people in the city to organize a congregation. And by 1792, they began construction of their synagogue, which was completed in 1794. Today, it's the second oldest synagogue in the United States. And years later, in 1824, it became the birthplace of Reform Judaism. If we could have photo number 11 of Francis Salvador, please. Francis Salvador was born in 1774 in London, where his extremely wealthy family was connected with the Dutch East India Company. In fact, his great-grandfather was the first Jewish director of the company. The Salvador family joined other wealthy London Jews in raising funds to send Jews of lesser means to the colony of Georgia in 1733. They had also purchased land for personal use in California, perhaps as much as 100,000 acres in what is now Greenwood County. If we could have photo number 12 of the map, please. Okay. This is a map of the area of what's called 96 in South Carolina, and you can see that it's really pretty far from the coast. The reason it's called 96, strange name, is because people believe that it was 96 miles from the Cherokee village of Kiowa. And later, this happened to become the site of two very important Revolutionary War battles. In 1775, the Salvadors experienced terrible losses. A highly destructive earthquake and a subsequent tsunami struck Lisbon, Portugal, and very seriously reduced the family's economic interests there. Additionally, at that time, the Dutch West India Company was failing for multiple reasons. Since the Salvador family was heavily invested in the company, this had a devastating effect on the family's fortune as well. But they still owned the land in the backcountry of Carolina. So in 1733, Francis left his wife and children in London and sailed to Carolina to make a living for himself and restore the family's finances. Of the 100,000 acres belonging to the Salvador family in the Carolina upcountry, Francis's father-in-law sold him 7,000 in the 96 district. That's the little red area we have on the map. He bought slaves and planned to start a plantation specializing in the cultivation of indigo. At the beginning of the Revolutionary War, Francis was drawn to the patriot cause and became active in politics. Despite the colony's statute against non-Protestants holding elective office, in 1774, Salvador was chosen as one of the deputies from the 96th district to the Carolina Provincial Congress. There is no indication that his participation was questioned at all. He became the first Jewish man elected to public office in the 13 colonies. In 1776, he also became known as the Paul Revere of the South. A group of Cherokees, allies of the British, had begun attacking settlements in the 96th district. When Salvador found out about the attacks, he rode over 30 miles to alert Patriot militia units elsewhere in the region about what was happening. He joined one of those militia units to help defend the area. Sadly, when his unit was ambushed by a group of Cherokees during the Battle of Kiowa, Salvador was shot and was later found in some bushes dead and scalped. So at age 29, he became the first Jewish soldier to die in the Revolutionary War. Okay, you can take that one down, please. Isaac da Costa, a merchant born in London, played a significant role in Charleston's Jewish community. He served as the congregation's chazan and donated some of his own land for the community's cemetery. Today, it's known as the Cumming Street Cemetery and is the oldest Jewish cemetery in the South. In 1780, when the British captured Charleston, he faced banishment and confiscation of his property. He and his family fled to Philadelphia, where he became an important member of the Mikveh Israel congregation. Today's congregation conducts tours of the temple on a regular basis and has a museum explaining the history of the congregation. Has anyone ever been to this particular congregation. Yes. In Charleston. Yeah. I have. It's really, really lovely too. And the museum is wonderful. Again, it's very much worth a trip if you happen to be in that area. Yeah, we'll now go to the last city, Richmond, Kahal Kodesh Beth Shalom. Compared to other colonies, Jews settled rather late in Virginia. A few Sephardim arrived during the 17th century, but most had emigrated to the cities we've already discussed. Why didn't the early immigrants move to Virginia? Probably the most important reason was that Virginia didn't have a major port city like the other cities we've already discussed. Williamsburg, the capital city, was located inland. As we've seen, many Jewish immigrants were merchants and international traders, so this probably limited the number of job opportunities for them. Another reason was the Anglican Church or Church of England. It was the official church of the colony, and every resident, regardless of religion, had to pay taxes to support it. And just as it was in Carolina, anyone in Virginia desiring to hold public office was required to swear an oath of allegiance to Jesus. However, in 1786, things changed for the better. The Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, supported by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, granted everyone in the state the right to worship as he or she pleased. Non-Anglicans were no longer required to support the church. That made moving to Virginia more attractive to Jewish immigrants. In 1779, the capital was moved from Williamsburg to Richmond. Jews, mostly Ashkenazim from the German states, began moving there and to Norfolk shortly thereafter. They made their livings as merchants, traders, and shopkeepers. If we could have photo 13 of Jacob Cohen, please. In 1785, two business partners named Jacob Cohen and Isaac Isaacs opened a mercantile store called Cohen and Isaacs. They also ventured into the hospitality business, opening one of Richmond's first taverns and inns called the Bird in Hand. Their businesses were so lucrative that they were able to purchase land in territory far west of Richmond. It has been said that they even hired Daniel Boone to do some surveying of their land. Both men were known to have enslaved people as their house servants. They became active in local politics, both serving on the town council. In 1789, they helped establish Richmond's first Jewish congregation, Kahal Kodesh Beth Shalom. Although most members of this congregation were Ashkenazim, they conducted services according to the Portuguese Sephardic tradition. Okay, we can take that picture down, please. In 1791, Isaac Isaacs donated land to the congregation for use as their cemetery. Several years later, in 1792, they dissolved their business partnership and moved away from Richmond. The community didn't have a synagogue until 1822, at which time it was dedicated and became the sixth oldest synagogue of the fourth largest Jewish community in the U.S. Up until that year, congregants met at temporary sites. And that's what I have. Comments or questions?
Yasher Koach. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Colette, because so much of this, aside from knowing about Chaim Solomon, I knew, and you hear names here and there, but not much in the way of story and what people actually did. So thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Any more comments or questions?
Yes. I think you probably had a lot of fun doing this research. It's certainly thorough and interesting. And I'm wondering, with all the facts you presented, how did you pick and choose?
pick and choose what to do.
The facts, yeah, there must have been
Good question.
I tried to pick, I guess, what one would call the heavy hitters of each one of those
Mhm.
cities. Yeah.
Was there anything to indicate why Philadelphia's Mikveh Israel is Sephardi?
I don't remember seeing that. Don't remember seeing that.
I, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if an Ashkenazi Jew was looking for a synagogue, they would go there too
I
because
think it was the only one in Philadelphia
it
for a
was the only
while.
one, right?
It's the only one, yeah.
Yeah.
But it still, today, it still follows the Sephardi tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was the Sephardim that were the first ones who came. So they established, and then when the Ashkenazi really came later, there weren't as many, and there was lots of then rivalry and strife between the two.
Sure.
So we think of it as being very separate. But early on, I think it was basically Sephardic, and the Ashkenazis who were here just went along with it.
Yeah.
Colette, I can't thank you enough. It was absolutely fascinating. And your research and especially your love of the subject really is a joy to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
Absolutely.
interesting.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we go, I have a few books to show you. Just in case, well, first I'll start with my friend Haim Solomon, is my new hero. There is a book published by the Jewish Publication Society called Haim Solomon, Liberty's Son by Shirley Milgrim. And it's a little book, and it's meant for younger readers, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. So I highly recommend it. And then in case you just are still interested in finding out more about early New York with the Dutch and how the English came to have it, this relatively new book called Taking Manhattan by Russell Shorto is excellent. It's excellent. And then if you just like to venture a little further into the Caribbean, I think, Mark, you've read this book.
I did read it. It's a fun book. It's a fun book, and it's
Jewish Pirates of the Caribbean, which is just the same time frame, but just totally different subject.
because it really surprised me. I had no idea there were Jewish pirates, but there were.
There's a question as to whether or not Lafayette was actually Jewish. I don't know whether
Really?
not Lafayette, not the pirate, Lafitte.
Oh,
Lafitte.
Not Lafayette, Lafitte. What is it, Lafitte Rothschild, whatever his name, but anyhow, the one from New Orleans.
It was Jean Lafitte. Yeah.
Yeah. And
There's
a
also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, there's a question as to whether or not he was Jewish. But then there are questions about Christopher Columbus. I mean, it gets a little bit crazy. And Abraham Lincoln, I've heard as well. It just gets kind of nuts.
that's
Who we will claim when, I don't know.
I was just going to say that in the school library, there's a book on Hanukkah at Valley Forge during the Revolution.
Oh,
Wow.
that's interesting.
very
Something that I found interesting but yet disturbing is, as you've seen, there are lots of gentlemen and ladies that we've discussed tonight, but there's no book that I could find online that just says all this.
That's why we needed you.
What were you planning to do for the next 5 years?
I'll be on the road. I'll see you later. I'll be doing my research.
So recently, Mark and I have watched a few webinars from California, the Orange County
Community Scholar Program, CSP.
CSP, Community Scholar Program. And they had Professor Sarna from Brandeis University, and he's a historian. And he talked about Jews during the colonial time too. So I wonder if he has a book out, or I don't know if you came across him at all, or what kind, or he just had to pull things from all different places, just like you did. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
so
mean, the information is certainly out there. I mean, I've looked at dozens of these websites, and the websites are excellent and they're just full of information. But it doesn't appear that anyone or ones have pulled this into book or books. And I'm just kind of wondering why.
and I knew almost nothing about the congregations down south, so I found that was really interesting. So as we were I looked at when you said about how Charleston's considered, the start of the reform movement in the United States. I was like, really? I mean, I'm hardly an expert about the reform movement, but I did look it up as you were talking, and it said that they were one of the founding congregations when the URJ used to be called the UAHC. So yeah, that I thought that was really interesting, and it's definitely still Dutch influence in New York. I mean, I live not maybe a mile or so from the big Dutch Reform congregation that's still there. So, which doesn't affect the Jewish part so much, but when you grow up in New York and was it fourth grade or something when you learn local history,
That's
that's what we learned about
right.
what happened in New York. I remember when our daughter down here had to do the local. It was all new to me learning the Pennsylvania stuff.
Sure.
So
Yes, I remember going to school in New York City, and in the fourth grade, the social studies curriculum was Know Your City. We had to memorize the major streets in Manhattan, even though we lived in Queens.
Whoa.
But that proved useful later when I was walking around New York. Thank you so much.
The
I'm
other question I had was if Gary Zola, who ran the archives at Cincinnati for HUC, I wonder what first of all, I don't even know where the archives are now. I don't know if they were moved to New York.
I think they're still keeping that in Cincinnati. They
Right.
still have a
Okay,
museum there. They have the archives there. They're just closing. They closed
School.
the
the
school.
school. Okay. Well, I would wonder what he's written and what he's got. I have to look that up because he certainly maintains all of these records and would be fascinating in terms of the connections.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Exactly.
I have to go. I'm in the middle of reading the book for the Temple Book Club,
Okay.
aside from a number of other projects. Um, I'll see the Torah Study people tomorrow. And thank you again, Colette.
You're quite
Thank you,
welcome.
Colette. It was
It
lovely.
was
Thank
lovely.
you.
Colette.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I loved it doing it.
Just remember Wednesday, February 18th, Jews in America and the Civil Rights Movement. So
Looking forward to it.
that'll be lovely, and
Very much
I'll make
so.
sure to send a reminder too.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Colette. And thank
You're
you
Thank you
quite
everybody
welcome.
for
so much,
joining us
Colette.
tonight.
Thank you,
And
everybody.
good
Have a
night,
good night.
everybody.
You. Good night.